Welcome back to the Marine Corps Movie Minute, where we discuss the movies of the Marine Corps 1 minute at a time. It is Friday, and we have reached minute 66 of Heartbreak Ridge. Me, as always, is Perry. I'm Brian, and today we have Brad with us.
Hey everybody, really excited to be closing this week out. This is a lot of fun, guys. Thank you so much for having me on.
Definitely our pleasure.
It's been fun having you.
Found a lot to talk about in these. I was actually a little worried when I was first, first gave you the minutes and I was reviewing them. I'm like, it's a lot of just conversation. The more I went through it, of course, obviously, the more we've been talking about it, we found a lot to kind of dig into, and maybe a few things to just sidetrack on. So
Yeah, it works.
Well, this particular minute begins with frantic Marines running around looking for missing gear. And the minute ends on the flip side with a major powers acting in an orderly, proficient military manner.
It's supply clerk.
He's damn good at it, too.
Yeah.
That's the thing. He probably is a good supply clerk. Like he is. It's definitely what's the term Peter Principle, a guy who was just promoted above his ability, and he thinks he can deal with everything the exact same way.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are certain things that you do it by the book, and then there are other things where the book is, written in erasable pencil,
Yeah. As a supply clerk too, you would want to, you'd probably want to make sure everybody had what they need.
Yeah.
I guess we'll find out that that's not entirely the case. Of course, it's not surprising given the way he treats Recon. So.
Right. We talked half a second last minute about, the guys were looking for some gear, and it's just more chaos in the barracks.
For me, it was just so weird seeing Profile, that's Tom Villard,
Yes.
who I remember distinctly. There was a pretty shitty show on in the 80s. We Got It Made, where he was the doofy guy who had a roommate who was also a sort of a slightly less doofy guy who had a beautiful maid. And it just couldn't have been any more of an 80s show.
The hot chick cook.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely that sort of thing. But Villard has such a sitcom-y delivery, which is so weird in a movie with Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
Because Profile in the entire movie, he's just like, oh, geez, I'm such a wacky guy. Oh, what are we going to do? And then Eastwood just squints and growls at everyone because that's what Eastwood's really good at. And it's really, the contrast between the two is jarring at times.
Well, if you notice, if you look at the, like the barracks, you can see nude women in bikinis, a bare ass, butt.
I love the posters.
Right. But then if you look at Profile has a puppy. He has a puppy up there. That's what he's got. He's got his Cocoa Puffs. He's always wearing goofy T-shirts. He's the goofy kind of. He's playing a Tom Villard character.
Yeah.
He's not the man killer that these Marines are supposed to be. He's almost innocent.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. He's playing he's playing it almost like he's a little kid. But the thing is, every time I see him in a movie, aside from one or two, like he was in Popcorn, I think he was like the villain. It's like a horror movie. He's always the doofus, dumb guy. It's either he's dumb or he's just innocent like that. And I was not saying that he's typecast or anything, but he plays those roles well. I mean, I brought this up several times. He was in a show called High School USA. It was like a movie that was meant to be a pilot, I think, for a show in the 80s, where it was like Michael J. Fox was the star and had every 80s sitcom, TV star as like the kids. And then it had all the like the teachers and parents were Eddie Haskell, were Wally, those guys, the elder the elder former teen stars, former television child actors. And he plays a dummy in that. Tom Villard plays Profile a lot like he played his character in One Crazy Summer. That's the one I always remember him from.
But he enlisted and got trained.
Yeah, exactly. That's a follow-up to that.
I'm just looking at the cast list of High School USA. Michael J. Fox, Nancy McKeon, Crispin Glover.
Yeah, he plays one of the kind of
Back to the
nerdy
Future reunion.
Yeah, it was prior to Back to the Future. And Anthony Edwards is like the jock. It's got Todd Bridges in it. It's got
And Dana Plato.
Yeah,
So
yeah, they're all in it. Tom Villard, there was one point he's messing with a robot, I just remember, and like this is one of those. I didn't realize this. I think I looked it up after the fact. It was I saw it as a movie. It was always on HBO, but I think it was meant to be a pilot that just went nowhere. But I was
Somebody just bought it up and used it to fill time.
Yeah, it was on
No.
Amazon Prime, and I watched it recently, and I literally I couldn't tell you what was about to happen, but as it happened, I'm like, oh, I remember this. I remember this. I remember like it was just one of those things I hadn't seen in like 30 years, and now I'm like, hey, I've seen this movie 100 times probably.
Yeah.
And Tom Villard plays a Tom Villard character. But there are guys as doofus and goofy and downright dumb that sometimes you might meet in the service, just like anywhere.
Yep.
So I kind of like the fact that this is kind of like a ragtag bunch of different personalities. They're all shitbirds in their own way. Like Stitch is a wannabe rock and roll star. Forgetty's kind of a tough guy. Aponte's off doing his own thing.
Yeah. Obviously not here.
Yeah, obviously not here, as we'll get to in this minute. And Tom Villar's just he's the shipper because he's basically a walking clusterfuck. He's a mess.
Well, it's something that's pretty common in. I mean, Stripes did really the same thing, just a little more amped up for comedic effect. But Stripes had the fat guy, the psycho, the
yeah.
The hick.
The big toe.
Yeah, the big toe.
Yeah, but I mean, even in like boot camp, particularly, like to this day, if I mention one name to a friend of mine that I was in boot camp with, he'll tell you 20 stories about this moron that was just in our. It's just, you wonder how these people function in life.
Yeah.
How they even made it this far into boot camp, and you just question like, wow, people are really that dumb.
Yep.
or just
some of them will still graduate.
Yeah, or just that accident prone even.
Yeah.
So I like it, but honestly, we've mentioned this a few times that this movie is a lot like it's a lot like the Bad News Bears type thing, where like Recon is the wacky thrown together team that's not very good. Clint Eastwood's Emilio Estevez, and he's going to get the Mighty Ducks whipped into shape. And First Platoon is actually like the rich kids who got with the really good coach and that. And there's a lot of those tropes in this movie, even though it's an adult action movie. And we had Tierney on, and I think it was her that said she wouldn't be surprised, or was it Travis? Somebody had mentioned that they wouldn't have been surprised if this movie ended in a football game or something like that. And in a way, it kind of does, because we have that pit fight, where they're in the water and they have the competition between the two platoons, and it has a lot of those tropes. And Tom Villard being kind of a goof is it. And of course, we got Swede in the background, and he's the tough guy. He's the real true tough guy. He's the heavy.
This particular scene reminds me a lot of some of the stuff. Now, granted, you and I didn't get called to like get ready to deploy like these guys are, but when that whole Bosnia thing was going off, there was a lot of prep, unprep, prep, get ready,
make sure you have your stuff. Which actually, it's funny because I was going to bring that up. You know how like some people have like they get out of high school. It kind of reminds me of the movie Top Secret, where he's getting tortured, and then he has the dream where he's late for his final exam, and he didn't study, and then he kind of wakes up from the dream and he's being tortured, and he's like, oh, thank God. My version of that, while I was in the service, and it probably was because of this whole prep unprep type thing, was getting called into action and not having any of my gear, or missing several of my gear.
The really important pieces, yeah.
Yeah, and not so much of even like
Where the fuck is my Alice pack?
Yeah, exactly. Like literally, like we have to go. I'm putting my stuff up, but I'm gonna get not that I don't have it, but that I'm gonna get caught not having it, and I'm gonna get in trouble.
Yeah,
and that was like
fucking boot camp.
And I know it's like a completely insane thing to like worry about, and it's not like I worried about it, but like that was my version of like waking up in a cold sweat because you missed your final exam and you haven't been in high school in 5 years, like because it was just like oh my god, I don't have any of my gear. It's like because I loaned it to somebody and now I don't have it back because that shit happened, like,
Well, just check your sea bag.
yeah, well, right, it's probably at the bottom, yeah.
Yeah.
I like the little bit of business between I think it was Keones and Profile. They're fighting over a canteen.
That happens too. I wouldn't fight too hard over those canteens though. How many Marines have needed one to fucking piss in?
Well, one thing I like about, and I like that banner as well, and one thing I think they did smart is so often when you have this sort of like ragtag bunch of misfits, and be it a sports team or a military unit or whatever, nobody gets along, they're not a unit, and part of it's beating them into a unit. I like that they skipped that. Recon were always on the same page. They just were pointed in a bad direction. They were like got away with too much for too long, but they did function well as a unit.
Yeah, they were a good team as themselves, but just trying to get them, working in the right direction. Yeah, that's a very good analogy, man.
Well, yeah, because they came up with that whole plot to have Swede beat up Gunny Highway together.
Yep.
They even sang a song about it and had coordinated dancing. That
It was Rockets.
Right. That's how on the same page they are. One of the things I had about that is I kind of question this whole series of events. Like they have their weapon in the barracks while they're trying to get their gear. They don't have the gear, but they have their weapon. I mean, even Swede has that big M60 there.
Yeah, that's a no-no. That doesn't happen.
No,
I don't know. Did it maybe possibly happen back in the day?
it's possible that things were different, but my guess is because later in the minute we see that they get on. Clearly, they must have gotten on a bus and they were brought to a staging area. What I think would have happened is they would have gotten called. Hey, Gunny would have shown up and said, "All right, guys, this is it. Get ready."
Yeah, that would have been the last thing they would have done, though. They would have taken a bus over there together and
to
checked
the armory. Right.
Yeah.
Right. They would have gotten on a bus to the armory. They would have got their weapon.
Happens in barracks.
Yeah. No, there's no way. There's no way that they went to the armory first. There's no way that they kept their weapons in the barracks. They would have gotten on a bus. They would have gotten all their gear. They would have gone on a bus. I mean, even like we've talked about this, like when we've had to do a hump. We get all our, all our gear on for the hump. Then you go to the armory, get your weapon, and then you form up at where we're going to start the hump.
Yeah.
And then you take that damn weapon back before you go back to. Apparently, the only thing you need to go to war are boots and a weapon. That's it, according to Gunny. So you don't need any of your other gear. You got your boots, got your weapon. All right, you can walk into combat then. So he's not too worried.
Well, two questions for you guys. First, I love that this is a good follow-up to the previous scene where he's talking about, I need to get these guys ready. If they don't get ready, they're going to get killed. And, basically saying his job is to turn these guys into Marines. And the very next scene shows these guys are not Marines. They are not ready. They are running around like a sitcom father who just found out his wife's going into labor.
You're not wrong. Yeah, where's my Alice pack? You notice Swede doesn't have his he's got his weapon, but he's just carrying his bags. He's not formed up. Like Gunny's squared away. Gunny's got everything where it's supposed to be. And then he doesn't even have his uniform blouse all the way on.
Yeah, he's not the only one either. It's like they all just kind of woke up in the middle of the night.
He's the most relaxed though of the group.
Is he relaxed? Your guys' opinion. Is he relaxed because he knows this isn't real?
Yeah, I think he's relaxed. I think he's relaxed because that's just him. I don't think he sweats the small stuff or the big stuff. Even later when he's getting shot at, he's got jokes. So I mean, yes, it's possible that this is they've done this before. They've been geared up and go. But the way they play the previous scene with Gunny and Chuzu, like they spring into action. They get up. They're serious. Even little Mary is concerned. This makes me think that this is not something that normally happens because even Major Powers was like, this is, well, we'll get it. It's, not this minute, but this is it. We're going to war. Yeah. This is it. We're going to war. And then they don't go to war. I think this is not the norm. Even Powers was a little surprised about it. So I just think that's just Stitch Jones. Everybody else is frantic.
Yeah.
He's just like, hey, baby, it's all right. Uh, I did like that he showed concern for Aponte because clearly they're friends, but also he's kind of the de facto. He's not a sergeant. They really don't show any sergeants in this unit. But he's the corporal, so he's like the de facto
squad leader.
Kind of, and he's always been the de facto leader. Yeah, he's just always been the leader, just from his personality,
just from charisma.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and he was saying he's going to be AWOL if he's not back here.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, he had some bad chow or something.
We don't know where Aponte is.
Oh yeah, he's like, yeah, you eat where's it? Yeah, I'm drunk and silly.
Yeah, well, I was, from that line, I have to bring up the garbage plate. You know that, right?
Oh man, please do.
Well, because Gunny notes that Aponte's missing. He said, yeah, he's probably not feeling well. It's probably that chick beef. And Gunny said, you've eaten worse. He goes, yeah, but that's when I'm shit-faced and silly.
That's what I was talking about. Yeah, I knew where he was going with it.
Right. So the obligatory thing you eat when you're shit-faced and silly in upstate New York, or Rochester specifically, is the garbage plate. So
yeah,
for those
Nick Tahoe's,
exactly. And
I'll never forget that fucking place. That place gave me a fucking heart problem the first time I ate there.
Brad, have you ever heard of the garbage plate?
No, I don't think I have.
Oh, it's amazing.
You're missing out.
It looks like trash. It looks like garbage. Traditionally, it's served with home fries and mac salad, and either 2 hamburgers or 2 hot dogs, but you can mix and match. Some people put beans in it. There's all sorts of options, but that's the traditional one. And then they put this meat hot sauce on it, and then it's usually got onions or
like a chili.
Yeah, it's but it's more meat on top of meat, but it's hot.
Yeah, I'm looking at a picture of it right now online, and I can actually feel my arteries hardening while I'm doing so.
Oh man, yeah.
It got so popular in Rochester that every plate, there's only one true garbage plate, Nick Tahoe's. Every other place had to come up with a clever name of it. Like I went to a 50s diner and they called it the Big Bopper Slopper. One place had an Oscar plate because there's a woman from upstate New York, my hometown, that moved down here, and they have a food truck called Trash Talk Food Truck. And they're actually opening a restaurant. They come around. It's getting so bad that I called them up one day because even with COVID, they're just doing all the takeout. So I did a call ahead order, and she goes, "Yeah, can I get your name?" And I said, "Yeah, it's Brian." She goes, "Oh, hey Brian, how you doing?" And then we went on talking for a while. I'm like,
I thought you were kidding about that.
Oh no, I wasn't kidding. I'm like, maybe
it'll taste at home.
My cousin knows them as well, and just one day they got talking. He goes, "Yeah, my cousin's always getting you guys and all that." She goes, "Your cousin again?" He goes, "Brian Lockhart." She goes, "Oh, he's the guy that's always commenting and following us on social media." I said, yeah, I joke with him all the time. I said, "I'm stalking you guys. I'm keep waiting for you to come out to my area so I can get more food."
Yeah, memes at 3 a.m.
No, but that is a staple for late night drunken, comfort food type thing up in my hometown.
Yeah, it's better than what is those fucking sliders? What are those called?
White Castle.
Yeah, that shit's better than White Castle. The only thing I wasn't a big fan of was the macaroni salad. Like the rest of it, I was down with.
So yeah, I love that. So when the hot sauce gets all mixed in with it, that's great.
See, I grew up in suburbs of Philly, so cheesesteak.
Yeah, right.
And man, I remember
it's hard to find a good cheesesteak.
I remember one night, it was a bachelor party, so we were in a rented van, and 2:00 in the morning, the bachelor's like, "I want a cheesesteak. Let's go to Gino's." And the lines at 2:00 in the morning were just going around the block. And
yeah, because all the bars and shit are around not far from that area anyway.
Right. And then what's hilarious is then there were so many limos and party buses dropping off all these bachelors. Is guys just covered in stripper glitter and
Yeah, and it's Philly, so I'm sure there were fights. Somebody's throwing batteries at somebody else.
oh yeah, it's like, where's Santa Claus? I want to finish him off.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing with the whole Tahoe thing. They
Savages.
always have a cop there at night just to keep, a couple of them just to keep everybody on the up and up. And yeah. In fact, the one downtown had a shut down. They're not 24/7 anymore just to avoid any trouble because of that stuff.
Oh yeah, you get enough drunks in Philly together. It's like, well, someone's gonna pick a fight with a raccoon. Just wait and see who it is. Hope it's not
Give it a
me.
minute. Yeah. You know what? Pete Koch, the Swede himself.
There's a little scene in this minute. We had Pete Koch on a few weeks ago, and his episode's about to air next week. So
Wow.
Yeah.
We were
Yeah.
super fortunate to get him to come on, and
He's a very cool dude.
It's so cool when Minute by Minutes are able to get people from the movies, and it's really pretty cool. When we did Escape from New York Minute, Roger Bumpus had a very, very, very small role, and that name probably doesn't mean anything to anyone, but we reached out, we got him to come on, and Roger Bumpus, who again didn't even have a line in Escape from New York, but he's best known as the voice of Squidward from SpongeBob SquarePants.
That's awesome.
Actually, yeah, I would have done that just for that.
Hell of a nice guy. He called my cell phone, and then we pulled him into the call. And what was funny is we're talking to each other before he comes in. It's like, all right, listen, everybody be cool. Don't ask him to do any impressions or shit. Or it's like, hey, be Squidward. 2 minutes in, he's like, all of a sudden he's like, well, SpongeBob, and it's like, oh, sorry, I can't. It's like, all right.
The one thing everybody knows me for, yeah.
And then what's real funny is now my kids think I'm really cool because they'll watch SpongeBob as like, Daddy knows Squidward. And it's like, what? And then I pull out my cell phone. I still have his number in there. And it says like Roger Squidward Bumpus. It's like, Daddy knows Squidward. It's like, let's call him. It's like, no, we're not calling him.
Yeah. My kids just want to talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's so cool.
But it's very cool that you got Pete Koch, who doesn't have a lot of lines, but boy,
Everybody remembers him.
Yeah, and does a good job. Does a good job in the movie.
Oh yeah.
I actually on Twitter got in contact with Vincent Izzareri, Lance Corporal Forgetty in this movie. It's just the minute that we had was right when Gunny confronts him and drops the steps on his sunglasses outside, and I just had the perfect screenshot of Gunny pulling off the glasses. It just came to me to just I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna at him instead of just doing whatever. So I added him and said, hey, Clint Eastwood reminds, or Gunny Highway reminds at Vincent Izzareri, not to litter, or whatever was the line. And he responded to us, and of course my next attempt was, want to come on the show? Crickets. Hey, you can't get them all,
No. That's what makes it cool when it does happen.
But it doesn't hurt to ask. What's the worst they can say?
If they say no, it's an interesting story when it's like,
Right.
yeah, not only did they say no.
Yeah, they say hell no.
Well, are you familiar with the guys over at the Rocketeer Minute?
Yes.
Because they, on the first episode, they, of course, Twitter, they copied Billy Campbell, the star of the movie. And he's like, oh, boy. And he referred to it. He tweeted, it's like, hey, let's just listen to the first minute of Rocketeer. They know more than I did, and I was in the movie. And he kept, he's like, offered to be on the show. They're like, this isn't happening, right?
That's pretty cool, though.
Yeah, he was on quite a few times. He's like, shit, that's pretty cool. And I'm like, maybe Bruce Campbell will hear about Army of Darkness. That did not happen. He was.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. I'm like, well, maybe we can get Pete to be our third man. It's like, hey, look, I did you a favor once. Come on, settle down.
Yeah, easy, guys. Yeah.
Well, that's in fact, I thought I saw Jim O'Kane. Oh, I've heard him mention it on a podcast. That he's like, yeah, he goes, we had Billy Campbell on, and then he never left. But I didn't he recently? They got Joe Johnston, but it was like Joe Johnston, the director of Rocketeer, somehow probably through
Probably through Billy.
Yeah, exactly. Became aware of it, but they hadn't done the show in like 2 years, I think, at this point. And then Joe Johnston reached out to them and said, "Hey, I just listened to this. Is great. I'd love to be on." And they went, "Shit, we better fire the microphones back up." And then they did like a week's worth of episodes of just interviewing and chit chatting with Joe Johnston. I'm like, that is amazing.
That's pretty cool, though.
They set the standards far too high for the rest of us.
Oh, yeah, the rest of us are screwed.
Yeah, we got to find a way, dude. We got to have like a watch party with like the entire cast and crew.
Yeah, I'm like,
we got to find the gaffers. We got to get some people in here.
Yeah,
Trying to explain to 90-year-old Clint Eastwood what a minute-by-minute podcast is.
He probably would not give a fuck about us.
Exactly. Well, but that's the thing. I'm like, how do we get into Clint Eastwood on here?
What the fuck is your name again? I'm like, all right.
Try and explain what a Movies by Minute podcast to anybody really is. Sometimes can be. They're like, so you do what again?
Yeah, I tried to explain to my parents, man. I was like, so what we're doing? Wait a minute, it's a minute. Yeah, and it takes 20 minutes to explain what you're seeing. Well, see, here the thing is, and sometimes it's not even that long. Sometimes it's much longer, but it's just 1 minute of the movie. Yeah.
It's.
We know, Mom. We know.
Well, I do this recurring thing especially with one buddy of mine. That anytime I mention, I'm like, I do it every time. I've been doing it for years. If I mention Star Wars Minute, yeah, this is this podcast called Star Wars Minute. It's a podcast where they break down the movie, and I literally just explain the concept every single time I ever bring it up to them. Well, the only problem with the Movies by Minutes is there's so many good ones. I don't have time for all of them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an aliens freak, dude, and there's an alien one I haven't got on board with because Christ, man, I got work to do.
Your own podcast to put out anyway, so
this is not even work for me. This is just hanging out with my boy. This is right here. I'd do this from a hospital bed. This isn't a problem for me. I just enjoy hanging out and bullshitting about movies with my friend.
What is funny is I still haven't finished listening to Escape from New York, man. And I loved working on that, and it was great, and it turned out a really good show. But it is tough because, first off, been working at home for the last 2 months now. I was like, oh, this would be great. I'll just work from home and I'll listen to whatever podcast. No, because it turns out when I would really listen to podcasts is on my drive in, and without a drive, I'm not listening to shit.
Yep, same way. Like I would listen to this podcast. I would listen, and I would legitimately. I really enjoyed listening to it. It was fun. Billy does a good job editing because most of my nonsense he cuts out. He does a good job with that. It's a fun listen, and there's a lot of ones that I do want to listen to. I want to check out. This whole work from home coronavirus thing has really just kind of put a wreck on like the normal tempo of our day. Like you go to the office and you would throw a podcast, so you didn't have to listen to some of your employees as people you work with, maybe just going on about stuff you don't care about, but it also gave you an opportunity to like listen to something in the background and focus on work. But when you're surrounded by like your office is literally 20 feet from your bedroom.
No, yeah.
And you have to just to go to work in the morning. All you got to do is literally roll out of bed, put on your flip-flops, flip-flop, 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 right into your office, bump your keyboard and start working. Like it doesn't really like that whole tradition of like, or that whole ceremony of listening to like an audio book or whatever. It kind of gets ruined. So like all the stuff that you would normally do, you just don't get a chance to fit into your day. And then you're just waiting on calls and other things that, is just as part of working that for some reason working from home, like working from the office, you throw a podcast on or an album or whatever, and you listen to it all day long. Nobody bother you. But if you throw a podcast on at home,
I say all the time, it's easier to ignore my coworkers than it is to ignore my family.
Oh, yeah. I hear the kids all of a sudden like planning a revolt downstairs. It's like, all right. And I said,
they're getting ready.
I talked to a friend of mine today.
They're stacking up.
And at one point, they were just havoc was going on downstairs. I was like, "All right, kids, come here and line up." And they just came up, and they all looked like they were about ready to go in front of a firing squad. I was like, "Line up in front of me," and they just stood in front of me, and I just started like barking at them like Arlie Emery. I was like, "All right, we're not gonna have this here."
Yeah,
I came this close to calling one of them
stuff.
a modern art masterpiece, but I stopped myself.
Oh no.
I feel your pain.
My kids are grown up, so it doesn't matter to me.
God bless. It's they're great kids, but this stuff is hard enough on the grown-ups. But for kids, it's like, okay, no school, but you're going to be learning at home, and you can't see your friends and all that. It's brutal for them. But all right, my job is to like be the enforcer that tries to keep them not acting like little terrors.
I'm gonna circle back to the movie for a quick second.
Yeah.
Do you guys really have any? I mean, the only thing I had a note about, well, besides the hurry up and wait, which you could see all the Marines doing, there's already a couple guys laying there.
Yeah, the hurry up and wait, man. That's the worst.
You know, I joke, you know, Marine. Well, the joke is Marines can sleep anywhere, and they already got guys sleeping on the field, you know, on the blacktop, the pavement there. You know,
Yeah.
Major Powers said that he said something about the DD 1348 request forms. Weren't he wants them filled out properly, or they didn't use them, or something like that.
Yeah.
We mentioned earlier he's a good supply guy. He's that's definitely something a supply person would worry about, is the forms being filled out properly. We're going to do everything in order, military proficient manner. And he said he basically wants to inventory every round of ammunition, and it's going to be returned exactly as it was. Now, Chuzu's kind of rolling his eyes at him, but he's not wrong for being anal retentive about it. You want to keep count of that ammunition.
Yeah.
But maybe that's not exactly what needs to be done right then and there.
Especially if the Marines were keeping weapons in their
Yeah.
barracks, like what it appears to be happening.
Right. I looked up that DD 1348. It's like a standard request form or something like that for equipment. I actually found the actual form. It's on some military portal thing. It looks just like every other government military form you've ever seen.
Oh
It's
yeah, I'm sure it's sexy as all hell.
Yeah, so it's like a release document basically. So
Yeah.
yep.
Well, no, it definitely Powers is a case of this is a guy who has competence in some levels, but he believes he's going to bend not just highway, but he's going to bend the military to his will because he thinks he's tougher than he actually is. And he thinks he's smarter than he is and more competent than he is. And really, the only thing keeping him from having the success that he wants is him. Like his ego, it keeps getting in his own way. So when he gets his ass kicked in the pit, and when he thinks he's going to bark orders and whatever, and then his commander cuts him down to size.
Right.
He just isn't, it's Peter Principle. He got promoted beyond his abilities and isn't humble enough to accept that and learn, which is different than other characters in this movie. They figured out, I was like, oh crap, I'm out of my depth, and go to highway or listen or learn. But his ego's too great to do that.
Yeah, he might be a competent officer in his, chosen field of endeavor, but where he's at right now, he's just a square peg in a round hole. He doesn't really fit well.
I think you said he's trying to take which he probably excelled at, with maybe being a little anal retentive at supply, and apply that to a infantry unit.
Yeah, infantry unit whose job is just to kill bad guys and get shit done.
You're right. Right.
Well, I mean, and you look at Ring, who this was a guy who was also out of his depth, who makes mistakes, but listens and learns and improves. And Powers just doesn't have that ability.
No, he just thinks because he's a major, he knows better.
Never had any officers like that, have we?
No, I can't say that would be the. Wait a minute. Yeah, I think there's been a few.
I say no names. I don't want to have to bleep it. No, okay. Let me give you an example of this.
We've had some really cool officers, though, man. We had some that took us to the flight simulator. We've had some other ones, and then we had other ones that we thought would be cool, but they were way more political and then like, oh yeah, no, I'm going to take care of you, and then you come to find out, no, they were just lubing up to get you, And then there are other ones that you knew they didn't like you. You knew they were out to get you.
Just gonna say maybe there was one or two that I rubbed the wrong way personally. What, you know why you're on the night shift during this exercise? Because you're on the shift I'm not on. I was basically told that one time. Well, I can't please them all, right?
Yeah, but you know what? Who won? Because who's got a podcast? And who doesn't?
Exactly.
Who's listening to who now?
Right. Like, well, but who's also bringing it up on a podcast 20 years later?
Yeah, they probably forgot our names. Yeah, exactly.
All right. Anyways, that's all I had for that. I just wanted to bring up DD 1348s. Very important, riveting stuff about this minute. Do you guys got anything about this minute in particular?
Nope.
Brad, do you have any final thoughts about the movie as a whole, since this is your last day with us?
First off, this is a much more. I was sort of researching it when you guys gave me the chance to come on the show. It was a much more successful movie than I thought it was. This was a good moneymaker for Eastwood, and this was not a time where his movies were really that successful. You think of him being this A-list star for his entire career, and he went through a real period where he was trying to figure himself out because, well, as we talked about earlier this week, he stopped being a viable action star because he got a little older and people were having a tough time buying him as a serious actor and a serious director because he's so iconic that it almost became parody. So they would have the jokes about how, Squint Eastwood because he never opens his eyes and just sort of growls his way through dialogue. And I think with Unforgiven and maybe White Hunter, Black Heart, those two movies, people started understanding that there was a different depth to them. So it's neat to see this was sort of right before that transition began. Really neat movie, and it's also great talking about it with you guys because you have military experience and you can really give a different perspective than I have. And if I could have just a moment to be a little serious, and I don't know if you've had other guests sort of call this out, but I did not serve. My father did. He actually served during the Vietnam era. He was actually stationed in Korea in the neutral zone. Oh. I do have uncles that served in the military as well. So I was sort of taught to have a great respect for what you guys do. So I just want to say, in all sincerity, thank you guys very much for your service, and I hope it's properly appreciated, and I do.
Well, I appreciate it.
We appreciate that too. Being a Marine was my dream job. That was the one thing that I always wanted to do, and I only got to do it for a little bit, but yeah, we appreciate it, man. That's thank you very much.
Well, it's a big deal, and you guys, especially Marines, that's no joke. Being in an era where we're not in an era where there is a draft or anything, you guys decided on your own that you were going to subject yourself to a very challenging, but in the end, from everything that I can tell from the respect you have for the military, something very rewarding. And I'm sure you guys aren't given enough credit for that or enough respect for that. And I just want to give you that due.
Yeah, thank you.
Super appreciative. Very nice of you to say. Yeah, no, we appreciate you coming on. As we've had, I think we've had a fairly lively conversation these last few days. So yeah, we're really, really happy you could come on. And I don't know if I mentioned it in the last 5 minutes, but this movie in particular had an influence in my decision to join the Marine Corps because I just liked it so much, and Clint Eastwood was cool, and there you go. So.
Enough said.
Exactly. Well, Brad, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you, in your podcasts?
Yeah, well, as I talked about before, I am the host and co-founder of the Cosmic Geppetto Podcast, where we talk about all things pop culture. You can find us on Twitter at Cosmic G Pod, and follow us there. And guys, would love to have you on. We're gonna have to figure out a way to have you join the fun at Cosmic Geppetto.
Sure.
Perhaps. Hey, Top Gun's gonna come out sooner or later. The new Top Gun, and maybe talk about that in other military movies, because it'd be great to have your perspective on that.
Yeah, love to, man.
Anytime. All right, well then I'll do our plugs. What's it? It's Friday, so we'd just like to ask everybody to go to moviesbyminutes.com and check out all the other Movies by Minutes, and I'm sure there's something there that tickles your fancy.
Star Wars.
Yep, Star Wars is one of them. Pay special attention to them for kicking off the whole thing. Of course, we're Marine Corps Movie Minute Pod on Instagram and MCMM_ podcast for Twitter. And of course, the Marine Corps Movie Minute Quarterdeck Facebook group, if anybody wants to join that. And other than that, thank Brad for joining us. Once again for the week.
Thanks,
yeah,
man.
it was a good time. Before we show up on Monday, Perry, to do minute 67, I need you to fill out the DD 1348 request forms. I want every one of these podcasting paraphernalia, headsets, recording devices. I want them all returned in the order in which they were signed out to you by Monday.
Well, that sucks.
Fuck you, man. It's as good as it's going to get. It's fucking 1 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, I wasn't talking about your line. I was talking about filling out all those forms.
Whatever. Still fuck you anyway.
Bravo, sir.